Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're tackling a concept that sounds a bit academic, but is actually fundamental to everything. We're talking about neutral posture. It's the invisible foundation for pretty much every move you make.
It really is. It's the biomechanical point zero. And for this dive, we're looking at some really interesting sources. We're using the classic Kendall model to define it for humans, which is key for things like Pilates certifications.
Right.
But then, and this is the cool part, we're comparing that human structure to the alignment of a high-performance Arabian horse.
I love that. So we're looking for the universal truths here. Our mission today is to really unpack what neutral posture means. Why is it the baseline? And what are these, mechanical principles that link us to, of all things, a horse?
It's all about efficiency, not dogma, just pure mechanic.
Okay, let's unpack that. When we talk about Kendall's model for the human body, what are we actually trying to do? Is it just like stand up straight?
It's a little more subtle than that, and definitely not rigid. Neutral posture is the reference position where the natural curves of your spine are. Well, they're respected.
Respected meaning they're there, but not too much.
Exactly. You've got that gentle curve in your neck, the cervical lordosis, then the one out in your upper back, the thoracic kyphosis, and of course the inward curve in the low back, the lumbar lordosis. They all need to be in balance.
So these curves are like our shock absorbers.
Yeah.
What does it look like when they're all lined up for anyone trying to picture this at home?
So if you could drop a plumb line from the ceiling next to someone standing, that line should ideally pass through 5 key points.
Okay, what are they?
It starts at the earlobe, goes through the center of the shoulder joint, then the hip, right through the middle of the knee, and finally it lines up with that bony bit on the outside of your ankle.
Wow, that's incredibly specific. So what happens if, say, that line misses your hip and falls an inch forward?
Well, right there you've created a problem. The body is instantly out of balance. The muscles on the front of your body have to suddenly, fire up and work way too hard just to keep you from falling forward.
They're fighting gravity.
They're fighting gravity. But when the alignment is correct, the load is just distributed evenly.
The goal is economy. The body is using the least amount of energy possible just to hold itself up.
Precisely. It's the position where your deep postural muscles, your transverse abdominis, your multifidus, can do their stabilizing job without strain.
And the sources say this isn't a static pose, right?
Not at all. That's the crucial nuance. It's a dynamic equilibrium. Your nervous system is making constant micro-adjustments. It's always active.
So if your nervous system is running the show, in Pilates, for example,
Yeah.
starting from a non-neutral position means you're just training a fault.
You're training compensation, not correction. You're reinforcing the problem. If you start an exercise with, say, a big pelvic tilt, you're just teaching your body to get better at compensating, not at functioning well.
Which brings us to the really high-stakes part of this, professional certifications. Why is this so critical for instructors to master, especially for their exams?
Because neutral posture is. It's the yardstick. It's the baseline you use to analyze everything else. Without a clear understanding of neutral, you can't see where the problems are. You can't see which muscles are too tight or too weak.
And you could actually make things worse for a client.
Absolutely. Starting someone with, for instance, a really arched lower back in a bridge is just reinforcing that pattern. You're loading up already stressed structures.
Right onto the discs and the little joints in the spine.
Exactly. The superficial muscles, the facet joints, the discs. So for exam candidates, this is strategic knowledge. They have to show they get the why.
How does that actually show up in the exam? I mean, the written versus the practical part.
Well, in the written exam, you have to be able to define it clearly. You have to cite those anatomical points we talked about. You need to justify why it works. Explain that the curves are for shock absorption. But in the practical, the evaluator is looking for something more. They want to see if you can adapt it for different bodies.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
No. How do you find neutral for someone with a really stiff back? Or severe kyphosis, that forward rounding? That's the real test.
So the biggest mistake isn't just getting it slightly wrong. It's confusing true dynamic neutral with some kind of rigid forced shape.
That's the one. The major pedagogical error is confusing neutral with forcing a flat back. In French, it's called dos plaqué, forcing your low back to the floor. It just eliminates that crucial lumbar curve.
And that's dangerous.
It is, because you lose your shock absorption. You make the body rigid and vulnerable.
Okay, now for the part I've been waiting for. This jump in the source material is fascinating. Why are we suddenly talking about an Arabian horse?
Because it's a brilliant way to understand the universal laws of mechanics. I mean, think about it. Biped or quadruped, It doesn't matter. You still have to manage gravity. You still have to distribute forces. You still have to protect your joints. The laws are the same.
So the horse's challenge is basically our challenge,
Yeah.
just rotated 90 degrees.
That's a perfect way to put it. The horse's top line, its neck, back, and loin, it all has to work together to distribute load. The source describes the ideal as being taut like a bow.
That's a great image. So a horse with a hollow back, what they call a saddleback, is that the same mechanical flaw as a human with a super arched lower back?
It's the same functional failure. In both cases, the core structure has collapsed. For the horse, that hollow back creates massive compression on the vertebrae, and it blocks the power coming from its hind legs. For the human with hyperlordosis, you get the same thing: compression and blocked movement in the low back.
Wow. So the comparison just proves that neutral isn't some arbitrary human rule. It's a functional adaptation. It's the body's smartest answer to gravity.
Exactly. It helps us see the bigger picture. Whether you're coaching a gymnast or looking at a racehorse, you're looking for an organized body that can move efficiently.
Okay, let's bring that back to the human body and get a bit more technical. Let's break it down segment by segment, starting from the ground up. The feet.
Right. The base of support, everything starts there.
Yeah.
You want balanced weight across what we call the tripod of the foot.
The tripod.
Yeah, the ball of your big toe, the ball of your little toe, and the center of your heel. And crucially, your knee should track over your second or third toe. If your arches collapse, the whole chain above is compromised.
And moving up from there to the pelvis and lumbar spine. This is where everyone gets confused.
This is where analogies are key. To find a neutral pelvis, you need to keep that slight natural forward tilt, that little bit of anteversion. The checkpoints are the bony points at the front of your pelvis, the acices and your pubic bone.
The headlight.
The headlights, yes. Those headlights and your pubic bone should be in roughly the same vertical plane.
So if my headlights are pointing up at the ceiling, I've tucked under, I've flattened my back.
You've flattened your back, you've created that dos plaqué, you've lost your shock absorption, you've made the pelvis rigid. Not the goal.
And then the rib cage sits on top of that.
It needs to be stacked right over the pelvis, not flaring out, not slumping forward. If the ribs jut forward, you overextend your upper back and you completely mess up your breathing mechanics. You end up as a shallow chest breather.
And finally, the head and neck, the text neck problem.
That's the modern enemy of neutral, for sure. In a good alignment, your head is balanced right over your spine, not poking forward. And that takes work from the deep neck muscles, the ones right up by the skull. If they're weak, the big muscles on top, like your upper traps, take over.
And you get that constant shoulder-shrugging tension and headaches.
That's the one. But when all these pieces line up, the nervous system gets this clear signal that says, okay, we're safe, we're efficient. You can come down.
It can move away from that state of constant high alert.
Precisely.
Let's talk about the kinematic impact. How does this affect just walking? If you're moving from a bad position, is your body just choosing, brute force over elegance?
That's a fantastic way to put it. Neutral posture is the prerequisite for efficient locomotion. When your pelvis is neutral, your hip can move freely, your center of gravity flows. If you lose neutral, the system instantly compensates.
What does that compensation look like?
It's costly, inefficient. The big global muscles, your hamstrings, your hip flexors, they just grip. Every step becomes a jerky, fragmented movement instead of a smooth transfer of load. It's why people get tired so fast and develop chronic knee and back pain.
And the source material mentioned EMG studies on this, right? Electromyography. What does that tell us?
It gives us concrete proof. The EMG studies confirm that when you're misaligned, the body uses the superficial muscles, your six-pack muscle, your outer obliques for stability. It's a clumsy, brute force strategy.
But in neutral.
When you correct the alignment to true neutral, the deep muscles, the transverse abdominis, the multifidi, they fire sooner and in a much more coordinated way.
So you're literally switching the motor pattern. You're going from chaotic compensation to a finely tuned internal system.
You are retraining the nervous system, and that's the whole point of the teaching cues in Pilates. That bowl of water analogy for the pelvis isn't just a cute image. It's helping you feel your internal reference points for neutral.
We have to talk about the professional and really the ethical stakes here. If an instructor misunderstands this, the consequences are huge.
They're enormous. An instructor who teaches flatten your back is teaching their students to erase their natural curves. That limits mobility, it overloads the discs, it can actually create the dysfunction it's supposed to be fixing.
So the ethical obligation is to give instructions that optimize how the body works, not just give a command like clench your abs.
Yes. That student with low back pain probably needs to find a soft, mobile pelvis, not lock everything down. Understanding that is. It's the core of an instructor's professional integrity.
And this is why that written exam, that shared vocabulary, is so important.
It's vital. It allows a Pilates teacher to talk to a physical therapist or a doctor using the same language. It ensures you understand the why behind your corrections, not just the what. It elevates the practice from, choreography to something truly clinical and intelligent.
And when you bring that horse comparison back in, you realize posture is never just about geometry.
It's an expression of a global state. It reflects muscle tone, emotions, tissue health, everything. Looking at these universal mechanics makes the whole practice smarter.
So as we wrap this up, what's the one key takeaway for someone trying to integrate this concept?
I'd say stop trying to memorize definitions and start focusing on principles. Neutrality is a lens. Learn to see it in others, but more importantly, learn to feel it in your own body. If you can feel where your own feet, pelvis, and head are in space, you can teach it, you can own it.
And use precise words. Don't just say tuck your tail.
Exactly. Precision in language leads directly to precision in movement.
Which brings us back to that universal lesson. So the final challenge for you this week is to look beyond just people. Observe any living thing in motion, a dog running, a colleague walking, and just watch how it manages load, how it organizes itself for movement.
That holistic view is everything. The goal is to make sure the body, human or equine, is truly respected and understood.
And the source leaves us with this beautiful final thought. A free back, whether human or equine, is already an ease conversation between the body and gravity. We'll leave you with that for your next movement session.